Now that I control all of the HBC, I would like to inspect the area of New Caledonia and Colombia. I feel that they are a very troublesome region, but I'll have to inspect for myself.
Of course, sir.
Hello, sir. All is well here, I'm assuming?
Yes, sir. Quite well, sir. Quite well.
That is good. Hello there.
Hello.
How is this fort doing?
All is well, sir. All is well.
Okay. That's fine. Hello, I am assuming that all is going well here too.
Could I get some blankets? It gets very cold in the winter time, if that's not a bother.
No, of course not. We can manage that. Yes, we can give you some blankets.
Thank you.
I now proclaim this Fort Vancouver.
Yay! Hurrah, hurrah! Who will be the chief actor?
That is a very good question. The chief factor will be...
John McLaughlin, a man of Irish, Scottish, and French-Canadian descent, strolled onto the scene. He was an easily noticeable character because of his somewhat unnerving physical appearance. With his mane of white hair and smoldering eyes, a tendency to favor patched clothing, and often forgot to bathe, being 6 foot 4 inches tall, he was hard to miss. But he was also known for his fairness and treating employees with parties and dinners. He was regarded as a very capable administrator by many.
Thank you, Mr. Simpson. I promise to do whatever I can to make this great company, the Hudson's Bay, an even greater power in the northwest of Canada.
Wow, thank you, John. Just remember, do not ever help those stinking Americans.
Little did George Simpson know, John McLaughlin planned to help Americans because he felt their presence and cooperation would help the fur trade.
McLaughlin foresaw that the Americans were destined to take over the Oregon area. In order to lessen competition to the HBC's fur trade, he treated the new settlers kindly. The Americans were given money and food. McLaughlin's actions helped save him from possible attacks on the forts. However, they also attracted and helped many more Americans go into Oregon. The American presence south of the Columbia River is very strong, and although John McLaughlin has done exactly what Simpson did not want, he had managed the fur trade in the region very well.
The Russians had already dominated the fur trade in Alaska, and they continued to establish fur trading posts further south along the northern northwest coast. The HBC didn't like this, and in that year the two came to an agreement where the Russians would seize their trade south of the 5440 North parallel. In return, the HBC would be in charge of supplying provisions to the Russian posts in Alaska.
Look, it's the Beaver! What a magnificent steamship it is!
Following the promise they made, the HBC brought the food to the Russians' post with a small steamship called the Beaver. However, they tried to make as much use of it as possible. Therefore, it was used as a mobile trading post that the First Nations living along the coastline could also have easy access to. It was a win-win situation for the HBC because it also increased British presence in that area.
Factor, this fur trade has not been expanding as I had hoped. We must close this fort and all the fur trading operations. There is more to read elsewhere.
George Simpson is not pleased with what he sees on the tour and closes all the coastal forts except Fort Simpson. Simpson's wish was to consolidate the HBC's fur trade in the east because the declining fur trade. However, he wanted to shift the HBC towards Pacific shipping and understood that Americans would take over Oregon anyways.
An idiot! How could a man like him do such a thing? My life was here. 15 years I devoted to the development of the Oregon Territory. And now it's all gone? How could Simpson think that our forts are not expanding? And even a hindrance? The HBC is only strong here because of them. I have made Fort Vancouver a source of pride for the HBC. I have seen the potential of the fur trade here and looked to a wonderful future. But Simpson, George Simpson, changed his mind and decided that it was all in vain. My hard work, it's all gone.
Hey, McLaughlin Jr.
McLaughlin.
And just like that, John McLaughlin's son was killed in 1842 at Fort Stikine.
I couldn't believe what I heard when I was informed my son had been killed. It was the most tragic moment in my life. And that Simpson didn't even take responsibility for the murder? He called it a justifiable homicide, and that was it. At that point, I felt my mind exploded. What a cruel, disgusting man, I thought. That distrust and hatred for Simpson will never leave me.
By now, the Fort Vancouver area had been overwhelmed by American settlers, and their influence is causing the HBC a problem to produce great profit. Simpson became alarmed.
I had encountered the increasing influence of American settlers into this region. If this wasn't dealt with, soon the fort shall be completely succumbed.
As a result, Simpson ordered James Douglas, the chief factor of Fort Vancouver, to establish a new depot on Vancouver Island.
I was informed by one of the governors to establish a new fort on Vancouver Island due to increasing influence of the American settlers.
By the spring of 1843, Douglas and Simpson agreed to choose Fort Victoria as a new depot in honor of Queen Victoria. By 1844, the fort was finished.
The finished fort contained 8 buildings that were all warehouses for the furs and goods. The fort was surrounded by a rectangular stockade with a tower at each corner for security. It appears that for the years to come, this fort will flourish.
Eventually, Douglas was appointed chief factor of Fort Victoria, and the area quickly became a profitable site.
15th, 1846, Britain and the United States of America signed a treaty called the Oregon Treaty in what is now Washington State. This treaty brought an end to the Oregon boundary dispute, and it has established an extension to the boundary at the 49th parallel. The extension went westward all the way to Vancouver Island, in which Vancouver Island belonged to Britain. Meanwhile, the United States of America was building up the American Civil War in 1861. They were so busy with the Civil War that they no longer had interest in the northern part of Oregon Territory any longer. The northern boundary of the 49th parallel would eventually become the Canadian province of British Columbia.